7 years old, and this is not your home. Your father pulled every string he had to put you here, and then he left. You pour wine at feasts for men who do not know your name. Latin every morning, because a knight who cannot read is just an expensive peasant. Chess, because every piece on the board can be sacrificed, and you need to understand that early. You scrub floors until your arms go numb, and then you scrub more. You are not allowed to train yet, so you watch from doorways and memorize everything. Some boys cry for their mothers at night. You stare at the ceiling and want it more. Blistered feet bleeding through the wool. The steward points back to work and does not look at your face. A man gets dressed in 60 pounds of steel, and you understand for the first time exactly what you are here to become. You are invisible in every room, and invisible is its own kind of power. The tray goes down, the goblets scatter, and you take the hit and get back up. 3 months in, and the Latin makes sense. Something has shifted, and it does not shift back. A boy gets sent home in quiet disgrace. You watch the gate close and feel nothing but relief it isn't you. You are not comfortable here, but you are no longer afraid of it. 14 years old and assigned to Sir Roland. 3 campaigns, a scar from temple to jaw, and he looks at you like a problem he hasn't solved yet. The warhorse is called Destroyer, and it will bite you if you approach wrong. You approach anyway. Polish every piece until you can see your own face in the steel. He finds fault with all of it, and you do it again. The flat of his blade puts you on the cobblestones. He says, hesitation gets you killed, and mercy gets you killed, and you believe every word. Bent over a map at night, learning to read terrain. Battles are decided before they start. First real battle. Men screaming, horses thrashing, blood turning the mud red, iron and shit and fear, and no one warned you about the smell. He charges into the chaos, and you lose sight of him. You stand there shaking, gripping a spare lance, because if he dies, you have no purpose. He comes back, dented and bloody and alive. You sit in the mud after and try to understand what just happened. You take the mask off him, buckle by buckle, and show nothing on your face, standing 2 steps behind Sir Roland while he argues about coin watching, how power actually works. Alone in the yard before dawn with a practice post. Nobody told you to be here. The armor is perfect this time. He examines every piece and says nothing, and that silence is the highest praise you have ever received. You sign the campaign papers, and the fear is real, and you sign anyway. The campaign ends, and Sir Roland looks at you across the yard with something that might be the closest he gets to pride. In the tent, after a long ride, he moves slower than last year. You both know it, and neither of you says it. Kneeling at the back of a chapel watching another squire get knighted, counting the years until that's you. A letter from home finds you on campaign. It describes a world that no longer feels like yours. The boy who arrived at that gate is gone. You made the decision and you will not unmake it. He tells you your time as squire is finished. The last lesson delivered without being called that. You stand in the chapel at his funeral, and you are the only one who knew what he was actually like. You keep your mouth shut for the entire service. 21 years old and 12 hours on cold stone the night before. Just you and the oath and the full weight of what it's going to cost. Rise, Sir Knight. 2 words and the world divides into before and after. The ceremony ends, and reality arrives immediately. Golden spurs, a borrowed horse, and a horse that eats better than you do most weeks. Tournament registration, reading every other knight's equipment like a balance sheet. Charging at full gallop lance, leveled everything balanced on the next half second. Men die in these games, trampled, impaled, beaten to death. A fellow knight gets carried off on a stretcher. This is your income source. You take a deliberate fall, so a rich lord's son can ride past victorious. His father is watching from the stands, and that matters more than winning today. A barber surgeon stitches your arm without much care. You calculate the cost of this wound against what you won today. Standing before a seated lord delivering a controlled self-recommendation. This is also a kind of combat. 12 coins on a bare table and the numbers do not work. They have not worked in 3 months. 1 genuine win. Sword raised, crowd roaring, and for a single moment, you are not calculating anything. Negotiating your rate with a lord steward who wants to pay less. Your reputation is your leverage, and you use it without apology. Staring at your own face in a bucket of water at night. The oath was beautiful, and the reality has been bloodier. A sealed letter with a lord's crest. Real income, real ground, real stability for the first time since the knighting. A lord's hall. A surcoat in his colors, A bed that is yours every night. You had forgotten what that felt like. A message handed to you in private that cannot be written down. You nod and ride at dawn, through dark forest alone, with the message under your surcoat and the tree line watching from both sides, sitting across from a nervous castle official, asking questions that sound casual and are not. A skirmish on a muddy field. Efficient, not heroic. Eating at the knight's table with men who will die for you because you have already decided you would die for them. That bond is stronger than blood. Reporting to the Lord in clipped sentences. This is what the investigation found, and this is what needs to happen. Standing at a window watching the man you investigated get arrested in the courtyard below. Riding rear guard through hostile territory. Eyes on the tree line the whole way. Wars are won and lost in council chambers, as often as on battlefields. You are learning to fight in both. The Lord speaks to you in private and uses the word trust. This is how advancement actually works. Late around the dying fire with the brotherhood. The only moment any of you shows a face that isn't working. The king cuts the tails from your pennant on a battlefield, and just like that other men follow you. 30 men to feed, pay, and keep alive. The numbers have to work or people die. Supply ledgers at the camp table. This is also what command looks like. The ambush springs exactly as planned, and 30 men move on your signal. Alone in the tent after the men sleep with a bottle of wine, and 30 lives pressing down in the silence, standing at fresh graves in gray morning light. When you make the right call, you get the glory, and they get shallow graves. A bishop across a heavy table. You negotiate the church like any other contract. The captured knight's ransom counted onto the table. War working in your favor today. 30 men in armor at dawn, and you tell them exactly what is going to happen. No speeches, just facts. The order to retreat goes against every instinct. You give it anyway, because retreating today means fighting tomorrow. Reviewing the siege map at the camp table with the castle walls visible behind you. Patience as a weapon. Writing a letter to the family of a dead man at midnight. The pen moves slowly because every word has to be right. The weight of command is heavier than any armor. Border castle gray morning. You see every problem in the garrison before breakfast. Counting barrels in the undercroft. 3 months of grain if you are careful, 2 if you are not. 2 villagers arguing about a field. You settle it in 4 sentences and move on. A gap in the wall is a gap in everything. Scout arrives breathless, and before he finishes speaking, you are already deploying the garrison in your head. Enemy fires establishing siege lines below the battlements. You count them and start doing the arithmetic. You order the rations cut and nobody argues, because nobody has a better idea. Boiled leather soup at the long table. You eat the same as the lowest soldier, and that matters. The relief force rides through the gate. You held what you were given to hold. The Lord places the iron key in your hands. This place is yours to keep now. Alone on the battlements at night with the dark landscape around you. This is the loneliness of being the thing that holds. The king grants you land, real land, estates that generate income, villages full of people who owe you labor and taxes, a castle that belongs to you. A woman you have never met stands beside you at the altar. This is an alliance, not a marriage, and you both understand that. On horseback on a hill above your land for the first time. Your father wept when he heard the news. Everything he sacrificed to place you as a page has been justified. A convicted thief stands before you in the great hall. Your word is the law here, and you deliver it. Your daughter's future arranged across a table with another Lord Steward. Love is irrelevant. Legacy is everything. Tax collection day in the courtyard. The ledger fills. A rival lord catches your eye across the feast hall. You both smile and both know exactly what the other is thinking. A hooded figure in a monastery garden at night. Information is the most dangerous weapon you own, and this meeting is not in any record. New walls rising from scaffolding, wealth converting itself permanently into stone. The rival lord dies suddenly, in circumstances that are not investigated too closely. At the royal tournament in your own heraldic colors, competing not for coin but for the king's attention. The earl's chain placed around your neck. You commanded 200 knights and 1,000 men-at-arms, the largest force any baron could muster. The rebel leader died on your sword. An army moves across the landscape below, and every part of it responds. When you raise your arm, at the royal council table, when you speak, the king listens. Sometimes he follows your advice, and sometimes he does not. You saw the weak point in the enemy line that no one else saw, and you went through it. A hooded figure in a private chamber by candlelight. You say the name and the amount in the same flat voice you use for supply orders. The truth of what happens in these rooms will die with you. A lesser lord watches you count his money onto the table. You let him wait. The feast blazes and every face in the room is being mapped for threats and alliances and shifting loyalties, alone in the chapel at night with one candle. The first time in years the face you show is the real one. A rival's castle burns on the horizon. Months of work made visible in one night. Sparring with a younger knight who is pressing harder than expected, you compensate with 50 years of experience and say nothing about the rest. A sealed letter from the king. You read it and understand what great honors at this level always cost in continued obligation. The champion's sword placed in your hands in the blazing royal hall, the entire court witnesses it. Standing in the armorer's workshop while master craftsmen finish the legendary gilded armor being made into a symbol. Dawn in the private courtyard with the sword. The form is still perfect and the body is slower than it was. And this is the daily private accounting of what staying costs. Young knights at the edges of every gathering, watching you with admiration, layered over calculation. You count every one of them. A judicial combat in the castle courtyard with the king watching. This is what it costs to remain champion. One day a challenger will come that you cannot defeat, but not today. Through the city streets on horseback, and the crowd roars your name. You perform the legend they need. Alone in the chamber with the champion's sword on the table and the fires banked low. Just you and the sword and everything that brought you both here. Sitting with the king by the fire in the private solar. The most valuable thing in the room right now is your counsel, looking at your own hands in the firelight. Every scar is a date and a place and a name. A small boy in an oversized tunic carefully pours wine across the hall. You watch him and it costs you something. Sitting for the royal portrait in champion's armor, performing the official version of yourself for people who will inherit the story. The small, terrified boy and the champion. The same round white head, the same two eyes, and between them the distance of an entire life. Kneeling alone at the chapel altar at dawn, with the sword laid on the stone before you. Just the face. Just the eyes carrying everything from the first morning to this one. A prisoner escorted through the gates, and the intercepted letter changes the morning. At a rival lord's feast, gathering intelligence through wine and small talk, political operative problem solver, a man who gets things done without being asked twice. Training a younger knight in the yard, you adjust his grip and see your own early mistakes in his posture. A sealed letter slipped into your hand in a dark corridor. You understand exactly what's being offered and what it costs either way. You hand it directly to your lord unopened, loyalty over profit. No theater about it. Standing outside the chamber door through an entire night because that night required it. Standing at the deathbed, the world shifts on its axis. You are already calculating what comes next even now. Kneeling before the new young lord in his father's chair, you chose to stay, and the oath means what it meant the first time. Equipment inspection at dawn. One rusted sword handed back with a look that requires no words. Seated across from a lord who hasn't paid, 30 armed men outside make this a short conversation. Treating a wounded man, at arms yourself because he is one of your 30, and that means something. Night camp in a forest clearing. You walk the perimeter personally before you allow yourself to rest. Through a breach in the castle wall in close quarters. Ugly fast necessary. Counting the company's silver with your clerk verifying every coin. This is your men's lives converted to silver, and the count has to be exact. The last man rounds the bend, and you are alone at the crossroads. 50 candidates in the market square. Your name does work before you speak. Dawn inspection and one man's equipment fails. You make an example for everyone watching. Village headman in the hall, you listen to what the harvest actually yielded before you decide what the castle's share will be. A castle without water inside its walls is just a very expensive trap. Stable fire at night. Bucket chain from the well horses, screaming garrison moving before the second order. Interviewing a candidate for master at arms. The questions sound routine, and none of them are. A rider at the gatehouse at night, lathered horse, breathless man. You make the call on the spot because morning is too late. Evening inspection along the battlements with a small ledger, what needs attention, gets noted, and tomorrow it gets fixed. Negotiating surrender terms through the gate. extracting the best possible deal from a position with no good options. Firstborn son presented to the assembled hall. You calculate what this child means politically before the applause finishes. Late night with a bishop in a monastery guest room, the church is another power structure navigated with the same tools as any other. Your own banner for the first time. No one else's colors, just yours. Writing to the king by candlelight, every word chosen to build the impression of indispensable loyal service. A spread map and opportunity visible in the lines where the neighbor's land meets yours. 3 lords at your table for dinner, playing gracious host while conducting a strategic negotiation through wine and courses. The new walls rising above the old manor, wealth converting itself permanently into stone power, alone in the great hall after everyone has gone to bed. The distance between the boy who poured wine in a stranger's castle and the man sitting in this chair right now is the entire story. A prisoner in the dungeon and a single torch. You ask questions you already know the answers to, arguing against a policy at the royal council that you privately support. The real move is 5 ahead, and no one else can see it. Presiding over the earldom council, the machinery of serious power running through this hall. A foreign ambassador in your great hall. You are significant enough now that foreign powers send men directly to you. Standing at the deathbed while priests pray, the composure you maintain costs something in private that you pay anyway. Your children's futures laid out on the table as the strategic instruments they are in this world. Hundreds of men in armor in the courtyard, and every one of them is waiting for your word. A royal letter requesting your military support. You know exactly what it will cost the king, and you begin composing your reply. Chamberlain at the door before dawn with a challenge. You read it by torchlight, and you are already responding before you are fully awake. Alone in the yard before the castle wakes, the form is still perfect, and the body is slower, and this is the daily private accounting of what staying costs. Walking beside the king in the royal gardens, access to this man is its own kind of power. Presiding as champions judge at the tournament. Both competitors accept your ruling without question because it is you who rules. A young knight sits before you seeking counsel. You see every version of yourself in him and choose carefully what to pass on. At the king's right hand at the royal banquet, you started with nothing but your father's ambition and your own determination. Watching a squire polish your armor in the armory with the same motion your hands used on another man's steel 50 years ago, the full circle of it lands. The same face it always was, the same 2 eyes, and between them the weight of 50 years. 2 noble children carried past in a litter, while you carry a bucket across the same cobblestones. You understand the distance between those 2 childhoods, and you decide it has to change. 3 opponents at once in the winter mud, surviving through skill, because you cannot afford to lose the horse. Sharing a fire with 2 other broke knights between tournaments. The warmth of men in the same situation, finding each other. Directing the trebuchet construction outside the siege lines. Patience as a form of violence. A soldier caught stealing from the stores stands before you. The rule exists because you knew this moment would come. A royal tax collector backed by 2 guards demanding more than was agreed. You know exactly where your legal ground is, and you don't move. At the top of the highest tower at night, with the city spread below, everything is visible from up here, including how exposed you are.